4 quarterbacks could go in round 1 of the NFL draft, but I don't think they should. We'll discuss on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network.
Football fans, welcome in to the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert, the legacy, Louis DiBiase. On today's episode, we are going to talk about some debates going on around some of the top prospects in the NFL draft. Should 4 quarterbacks go in round 1? Should Ashton Jeanty go in the top 5? Matthew Golden over Tetaroa McMillan. We'll talk offensive line, running back, wide receiver, quarterback, all the top spots. Before we get into it, do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen each and every day, and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay tuned for the Armada Player of the Week later in the show. Louis, we're talking before the show. We're setting things up here. How many quarterbacks go in the first round? Your answer is 4. Why do you think 4 quarterbacks ultimately do go in round 1?
I just think there's more than 4 teams that need a quarterback in 2025. And with how unknown the quarterback evaluation process is, you just have no idea who's going to hit and who's not. Different things work every single year. Teams are just going to take swings. And that's why I think Jaxson, Jalen, Milroe, are they normally a day 1 prospect in stronger classes? Probably not. But both have traits that a team in the middle of the first round, end of day 1, I think is going to be willing to take a chance on. And I just think there's guys at the top of this class, I should say teams at the top of this class, that aren't going to take one early that might want to come back in to that first round. So I just think there's multiple trade-ups that could happen, and I really take seriously that Milroe accepted that invite. He's got to think he's got a good shot of going day 1.
Yeah, and even if he doesn't, it gives the illusion that he is potentially going day 1, so that could inflate the value anyways. I think you'll make a great point about the late first round and teams coming back in. I think the overall strength of the draft class not being great at the end of the first round, why would you pick at 25 when you could drop back to 40 and probably get a similar guy that's in a similar tier? And speaking of those buckets, our guys over at Locked On NFL Draft, they actually have a 5th quarterback that they think should be involved in that late first round bucket.
I have a group of guys with Jalen, Jaxson, and Will Howard, all guys that, like, if I'm sitting there at the back end of the first round, I'm like, give them to me. Because I think from what we've been told, and that's what I'm about to go back to this conversation, DP. But I listen to what people tell us, and I hear it. Let me say that I hear it, and then I try to apply the consistency parts of it. And it's real inconsistent on who we decide, who we let into the first round conversation and who we don't. Because if you take the helmets off and tell the normal fan just to watch a Will Howard versus a Will Levis and then tell me which one you think is the first round prospect, right? I think it would be totally opposite. I think all of them be like, I like Will Howard better, right? And so I would say this to the listeners too, that obviously we have to rank them because this is the rankings of the show, right? But placing those guys in buckets, Jalen, Milroe, Jackson, Dart, Will Howard, I view them all the same.
Now, that's a pretty strong statement. That's my guy Keith Sanchez from Locked On NFL Draft. Damian Parson, his co-host, also was high on Will Howard. I think Damian is higher on Will Howard than he is a guy like Jaxson Dart. Don't want to speak for him, but I'm, listening to the episode, that's what we're getting there. So I agree with you that it's likely that we see 4 quarterbacks go in the first round, but to me, it's all about Shedeur Sanders. Because if Sanders goes top 10, if he goes 9 to the Saints, he goes 7 to the Jets, somebody trades up to number 8 to take him. If he goes that high, like I'll even say 13 or higher. If Shedeur Sanders goes 13 or higher, then I would say there will be 4 quarterbacks. If Sanders goes lower than that, if he drops to 21 for Pittsburgh, or if somebody trades up into the end of the teens to get him, if that happens, then I would actually say I only think 3 go, because then it starts to push things down the board of teams that want them and how comfortable teams are sitting and waiting. And I think with the Browns and the Giants at 33 and 34, it does increase the likelihood that maybe one of those teams move up a little bit because it's not going to be that expensive. But also at the same time, if Sanders gets into the 20s, they could be like, why would we give up picks? Why would we do something like that when we could just stay here? And we're going to get one of, especially if Will Howard's in that conversation, or if Tyler Shuck, who's getting a ton of love lately, if he's a guy who's in that conversation, if there's Milroe, Dart, Shuck, and Howard all there at pick 21 when the Steelers come up, be like, okay, they may take quarterback, but then we'll still have 3 guys we're willing to take. Why even move? I think that could almost go the other way. So I think for the over-under, if it's 3.5 quarterbacks, Shedeur Sanders is the key, but I think I might go under.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think there are pros and cons to sitting and just hoping one of them falls to your early day 2 pick. But also, I think teams will want to get back into the first round because that 5th-year option is really important.
That's true.
If you do hit on the quarterback,
we've
that
seen
really
it
helps.
before.
Yeah, it helps with the extension. It's why a team like the Ravens get up to 32 to get Lamar Jackson back in 2018.
Why you take Jordan Love at 24 if you're the Packers.
Yeah. So I think there's pros and cons. You're right. The Browns and Giants could probably sit there at 33, 34 and have a chance to get one. But quarterback's different than other positions. If you identify one of these guys as worth it, making that investment to potentially be the franchise quarterback, then you don't just sit on your hands. I think you don't take the chance at that point. You get aggressive in that way. I will counter. I think you're probably right. If Sanders falls, it might push the rest of the guys lower down the board.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised, though, if a team like the New Orleans Saints said, and I'm not saying I personally would do this, but I wouldn't be shocked if a team said, we like Jackson Dart or Jalen Milroe's ceiling. It's just worth the chance in such an unknown class that one of those guys goes ahead of Sanders. I'm not predicting it, but I wouldn't be surprised at all. So I'll take 4, but I think at least 3. You could guarantee 3 are going. I really do think Jackson Dart's going to go from that 9 to 30 range. I think he'll be off the board.
And Ross Jackson, the mastermind, was on the show on Friday, and we were talking about the Saints situation, mostly with Derek Carr, but we talked about who would be a good fit and who he thinks the Saints like. And Ross seemed pretty convinced that the Saints like Jackson Dart, that's one of the quarterbacks that they're high on. And they sit at pick 40, and the Saints actually have a lot of picks because of the Marshawn Lattimore thing. They have 2 third-round picks. They have a lot of picks on day 3 of the draft. They can afford to move up. I think the Saints are actually the team that may be the team that moves up into the back half of the first round to get in front of Cleveland and the Giants and makes that splash. And I think Jackson Dart is the quarterback for them if he makes it past Pittsburgh.
That's the thing, is the 3 teams that are most likely to take a quarterback have high second-round picks. The Browns, the Saints, and the Giants. So I just think it's very likely at least one of them moves back in. I think it's very likely at least one of them takes one with their original first-round pick.
Yeah.
And I really do think the Pittsburgh Steelers, even if it is Aaron Rodgers being the guy in 2025, I'm really looking at that spot saying they're going to take another Kenny Pickett-like swing, because every year they're in that spot anyway, so you're going to have to take a chance at some point again. You missed on Pickett, but when you're a team like the Steelers that win 9 games a year, you got to take a chance on that level caliber of prospect. So I'm really watching Pittsburgh too. So there's 5 to 6 teams I could see doing it, and odds are 3 to 4 of them will end up pulling the trigger.
Yeah, you got me on that. If the line's 3.5 on quarterbacks in round 1, Louis, you convinced me. I'll go with the over on that. But there's plenty of draft rumors, plenty of draft questions to get into with the draft just a few days away. Today's episode is brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV Stick. And did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? It's truly one of the coolest things I've ever heard. You could turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with a Fire TV Stick 4K device with no console required. That's right. You just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. You can dive into hundreds of premium titles. One of my favorites, EA Sports College Football 25, Call of Duty Black Ops 6 as well. You can do all of that while also streaming all your favorite shows. Endless entertainment. With the 4K Fire Stick, you get Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. And again, that's with access to your Xbox games. You can bring a Fire Stick instead of your console. Like, do you really want to lug around your big Xbox everywhere you go? No, just have a Fire TV Stick 4K device and you're good to go. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller are required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. All right, Louis, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about how many quarterbacks might go in round one, but now I want to talk about some skill position players and, where they might end up. And the conversation around Ashton Jeanty is one that I've had a lot of fun partaking in, where he might go. And I'm starting to get the feeling, Louis, I guess really what it comes down to is I'm starting to get the feeling that the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to take Ashton Jeanty. And I'm looking at the other teams that might take him. And yeah, maybe the Patriots do, but I'm sorry. I don't buy that. I just don't. They can't afford to do that. And same thing with the Raiders. The Raiders are a big team that everybody is saying Ashton Jeanty to the Raiders. Well, the Raiders are a team that I don't think is in a position roster-wise to be able to afford to take running back that high in the draft. And I think Jacksonville's roster is set up in a place that they are. And it's kind of funny because in our Locked On NFL mock draft that we do every year, my guy Q from Locked On Raiders picked Ashton Jeanty, and then Brian Peacock from Locked On 49ers and Peacock and Williamson, he kind of made the argument I want to make, and he didn't like the move.
Running back going to the Las Vegas Raiders at pick number 6. And guys, I got to admit here, I am the chairman of the West Coast chapter of Running Backs Don't Matter. And so I don't love this pick just because I don't love any running back in the first round necessarily, as talented as he is. And it's not because of the talent of running backs, which is why I wouldn't make this selection. I think the perfect example that you laid out there, Matt, of all the hits of running backs in past drafts, Christian McCaffrey, he was a hit. What did he do for the Carolina Panthers? Not a lot. Because they didn't win with him. The New York Giants didn't win with their running back. Guess who won with them? The team that was already built and then sprinkled on a little bit of icing on top with a playmaking running back. I think that's how you build it. That's how you team build. When you have as many needs as the Las Vegas Raiders do, in my opinion, you don't go running back. But for Raiders fans, you're going to have a lot of Ashton Jeanty jerseys in the stands because he is going to be fun to watch. And who knows, maybe he wins for someone else later. But at least you got yourself a fun player.
That's my argument too. It's not that Ashton Jeanty isn't good. It's not that Saquon Barkley isn't incredible. It's you have to be in a certain position as a team to take a luxury position like that, like the Lions were in position to get Jahmyr Gibbs and take Sam Laporta. And like last year, Brock Bowers had the single greatest rookie tight end season of all time. I mean, period. Like, he was absolutely incredible. Sorry, Mike Ditka, you're my guy, but that was insane. And how good were the Raiders? They were worse than they were the year before. And look, it's not Brock Bowers' fault that the Raiders didn't win games. Like, that's not the case. It's all the other problems. But that is the point. You can have it. They just had Josh Jacobs and they let him go because it's clear that he wasn't good enough to elevate all the other problems that they have. And Jeanty is not going to be good enough to do that either. I'm sorry. He's just not. So I think it would be a luxury pick that the Raiders would be fooling themselves to think that they're in a luxury position to take. So for that reason, I think Jacksonville, who has 2 good edge rushers and a number 1 cornerback, and they just paid an offensive tackle and drafted an offensive tackle, and you're good at quarterback and you have a stud wide receiver 1. And like you have checked the boxes enough to earn the opportunity to take an Ashton Jeanty. And I just don't think the Raiders have. So whether they should, whether they shouldn't, I think they shouldn't. Whether they will or they won't, I think they would if he's there. I just don't think it's the smart move.
I think they will, because when you look at Jacksonville's situation, Trevor Lawrence, this is like a make or break year. Bringing in a solid presence like this in the backfield to help balance the offense. They need results right away right now. They have to win games.
They have to
got
win
a new
right
coach
now.
that's trying to win. They have a quarterback trying to pretty much save his career in Jacksonville, right? Getting an extension and trying to prove that who he was in 2022 can be him long term. So Jeanty could be that stabilizing force that Saquon Barkley was for Jalen Hurts in 2024. Should they, though? I'm with you, and I'm much less running backs don't matter like I used to be because, of course, I cover the Eagles and I saw a running back be the missing piece and literally take down a dynasty that was going for a three-peat. You look at the Ravens adding Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon to Houston, Josh Jacobs to Green Bay. Running backs help teams win a lot of games in 2024, especially with the new defense. Everybody's playing back cover too. They matter a lot more than they have in years past. But you and I think Brian made the perfect point. They're the final piece to an already complete puzzle. They can't be a position. Even Saquon, it felt like he was carrying Philadelphia, but he also had one of the best offensive lines in football in front of him. He had one of the best mobile quarterbacks right next to him, and A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. He was the final piece. I just feel like when a team like the Giants draft Saquon, the Panthers draft McCaffrey, the Jaguars draft Fournette, if the Raiders drafted Jeanty or Jacksonville, you're just wasting their life cycle in the NFL. They're wasting hits and touches because they're not going to matter because they're not going to result in plays that help you win a championship. So, yeah, I agree with you, but I think the Jacksonville Jaguars are very likely to take him. He is one of the few blue-chip prospects in this draft.
Well, Louis, you just threw up the softball to me because my other point on top of this, outside of it's not just Jacksonville's situation that leads me to believe that Jeanty should be their pick at 5. It's the rest of the draft. And it comes down to the big pick for Jacksonville right now, like the chalk pick, is Mason Graham. And I think Mason Graham is a solid starter in the NFL. I do not think that Mason Graham is a difference-making player in the NFL. That's just my opinion. I just don't see him as a game. He's not a Jalen Carter. He's not a Chris Jones. You know, he's not a Dexter Lawrence type, obviously. He is a, penetrating, physical, 3 technique, some length concerns. You look at the Michigan tape, there are some people who come away going, oh, Kenneth Grant. Kenneth Grant is the guy taking the double teams and taking the attention, and they got to stop him. And there are some people who would argue that Mason Graham isn't even the best D-line prospect on his own team. So I think that this draft doesn't have a ton of star players in it. It's got starters. And if you're Jacksonville, you don't necessarily need a starter interior defensive lineman. You are in a position you could take a star. And Armand Membo and Will Campbell. I'm not high on Will Campbell. I like Armand Membo better. If they're going to go O-line, take Armand Membo. You know what I mean? If they're going to go D-line, take a shot on another one of these. Take Jalen Carter. So you got the versatility to go with your edge rushers you already have. Like, do something else. I just don't think Mason Graham is a good pick. And you're talking about blue chip prospects. To me, there's Carter, Hunter, and Jeanty. And maybe you want to throw a tight end in there, Warren or something like that. But that's the top 3 to me by far. I'm taking one of those guys if I'm Jacksonville.
Yeah, I agree. I almost would consider trading down if I'm the Jaguars if there's a team that maybe would want to come up for like Sanders or another quarterback like the New Orleans Saints going up from 9 to 5. I'm kind of with you on Mason Graham.
The Dolphins for O-line. Maybe San Francisco would want to make a move up for like a Teteroa McMillan. He would be a good fit.
So if I'm Jacksonville, I would probably take Jeanty over Mason Graham, but I would almost kind of want to trade down. I don't know if the drop-off at that point is that steep. But yeah, I mean, there is not a lot of blue chip prospects in this class, and Jeanty would help you win games right away. And like we've talked on the show together, teams don't always think long-term. Championship is always the priority with every decision you make. That's just not how the NFL operates with every team. So I could totally see them going Jeanty at 5.
I'm with you there. And on tomorrow's show, or it might be a couple episodes from now, it might be 2 from now, we're going to do some bold predictions and things like that for the draft. And one of mine is we're going to see a record low of trades. I don't think there are going to be very many trades because there just aren't prospects worth going up and getting, and everyone's so similar. So with that, like, someone could come up to Jacksonville, but I just don't think there's just not enough people.
You're right. There's like 4 guys that are going in the top 5. And after that, if you told me somebody went 5th, I wouldn't be surprised. If you told me they went 32nd, I wouldn't be surprised. This is such
like
a
Walter
high variance
Nolan
draft. Yeah. Or a James Pierce. If you told me he went 9 or 10, Or if you told me he went 40, I wouldn't be surprised. Or Shamar Stewart's in that same category.
Luther Burton to me is another guy like that. Matthew Golden is a guy that some people are talking about. But with that being said, Matthew Golden is a guy that we got to talk about because there's a lot of people out there that like Matthew Golden, and I got to tell you, I don't think I'm one of them. Today's episode is brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada, and this week's Armada Player of the Week, of course, is brought to you by our friends over at Nissan. Each week, we're going to take a look at a draft prospect, pick one guy that stands apart, the guy that we believe showcased the strength and the power needed to push an NFL team forward next season. And I'm going to go ahead and give the Armada Clear Club Player of the Week award to Ashton Jeanty. We've talked about him quite a bit. Obviously, he has the ability to come in right away and get the job done. He's heavy duty. He's rugged. He can conquer the road ahead with capability and confidence. With Ashton Jeanty, you can dream big. You can go big just like you can with the new Nissan Armada. So make sure that you go forth and conquer exactly like Ashton Jeanty can do. You can also take the road ahead with confidence in any of Nissan's outstanding vehicles like the Armada, the Rogue, the Pathfinder. So go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. All right, Louie, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about the quarterbacks. We talked about Ashton Jeanty. Now I want to get to some of the other positions. We're going to start with wide receiver. And the question becomes, a lot of people like Matthew Golden, and the more mock drafts I see and the more time passes, I see Matthew Golden going ahead of Tetairoa McMillan. Louis, do you agree with that?
I kind of do. I think both guys are not complete prospects. I don't really love any receiver in this class outside of Travis Hunter. I think it's kind of pick your poison. Both guys have one elite strength. I think Tet has the size, and I think Matthew Golden has the speed. For me, I tend to lean more towards the speed. And in a class like this, I would rather just bet on that trait. I think there's a good chance that Golden actually goes ahead of him. I'm looking at that 13th overall selection. The Miami Dolphins, he just screams Miami Dolphins wide receiver. And especially if Tyreek Hill is not there for long, you want to keep that dynamic deep threat duo going in that McDaniels offense for Tua. I could see them trying to pair him with Jalen Waddle. Tet, I don't know, like he could go as high as like 7, 8, maybe 10, but I could see him falling into like that 15 to 20 range as well, like maybe 16 to the Arizona Cardinals. I actually think Golden's going to end up going ahead of Tet.
Why would the Raiders not take him? Geno Smith just played with DK Metcalf.
True.
I take the wide receiver. It makes it. Listen, I get the concerns with Tetairoa McMillan. For a guy as big as he is, he does not play with the level of physicality that you want for a guy that size. Yeah. Now, for a guy that size, he's a great route runner. He glides over the field. The way he improved his yards after catch ability this season was awesome. You know what I mean? That's why he's in this conversation. I'm always going to bet on guys with size. I think Golden is a great route runner, really good at adjusting to passes and things like that. But I just don't see at his size, 5'11". I think he has good speed, but it's not like, I don't think it's elite bursty speed, like he doesn't jump off the film. He's just a solid, like to me, he's a solid wide receiver too. And I just don't know if I can take that high, but talk about where Tetairoa McMillan could fall. That's something our guys over at Locked On NFL Draft talked about recently as well.
I think it's a situation where it seems like people either really love him or they kind of hate him. Yeah, it's one of the two, right? And if you're in the love category, he can go as high as 4 to New England, right? You say, hey, Drake May needs a big target. He's a big body wide receiver, a true number one with, upside to be a true X wide receiver, right? He can go as high as New England. But then I think if you look at the hate him side of it, right? The kind of like, we're not 100% sure. That's the people that may have him falling in the Seattle range, right? Like he's closer to 20 than he is to top 5 picks. So I think, but just looking overall, I look at multiple teams. You look at New England. Could they use a quarterback? Where would Jacksonville fall? Not a quarterback. I'm sorry, a wide receiver. Where would Jacksonville fall in the wide receiver conversation? Is that possible, right? Do they skip defensive line, O-line, and try to give Trevor Lawrence another big body wide receiver? Liam Cohen is coming from Tampa Bay, where they had Mike Evans, right? He understands the importance of size at the wide receiver position. They drafted Brian Thomas. Do you get him a young running mate, to go opposite of him? So you have New England, Jacksonville. Vegas is another. Like, I think all of these teams, to be honest, Pete, New England, Jacksonville, Las Vegas, they could use a wide receiver.
And see, here's what I would say. If I'm Miami, and this comes back to my personal philosophy, I would rather have Tetero and McMillan than Matthew Golden, because I like the diversity of the wide receiver skill set. You have the accuracy of Tua, and maybe that you don't need the contested catch and the size as much because his accuracy is so good, he's going to put it on you. But I think McMillan, unlike most wide receivers his size, has the ability to run those routes that they run in Miami, the quick timing routes, and to get into the holes in the zone with the speed necessary to do that. Like, he's fast enough and glides enough, even at his size, to do that, and he still gives you some diversity in body type and skill set and all of that. So I would argue that from your perspective, and there's a lot of people who agree with you that Golden should maybe go ahead of McMillan. Where would you slot McMillan then if you were just making a pseudo big board?
I think that 8 to 12 range, 8 to 13 is where I'm pegging him. At least if we're talking where he's going to get picked. Carolina is actually a team that's not getting talked about enough that could add a passing target to Bryce Huff. If they really want to build off what he did.
Leggett was up and down.
Yeah, Leggett was up and down. Adam Thielen, of course, is getting old, right? Yeah. He was on it sounds like he's in some trade.
They got rid of Mingo.
They got rid of Mingo. He didn't work as a former second-round bust. I could see it, and maybe
Jalen Coker? Is that the guy everybody was freaking out in fantasy?
Coker is a fantasy nerd's dream right now. Into 2025. I could see 8. I would say like Carolina. I could see Chicago taking him. San Fran, sneaky there with Debo gone, Ajax future up in the air. They took Ricky Parasol, but they want to keep building around Brock Purdy. And then like Dallas and Miami. So I think whether it's Tet or Golden, I think but one at least is off the board from 8 to 13. And I think that's kind of where I think Golden slates in. Because again, I think teams fall in love, even if it's unjust. Like I always think about John Ross in 2017. Teams fall in love with that kind of speed. It's why an Xavier Worthy goes in the first round last year. And I think he'll go off the board in the top 15.
And I don't see the time speed in the play. He's fast, but I don't see him burning
but the time
past.
Speed, man, teams read too much into it. You think every year teams are going to learn their lesson, and they never do.
Right. You're not wrong about that. Look, I think Golden will be a solid player, but to me, he's like Golden is I think if he was in last year's class, Matthew Golden would be going early second round.
I agree. I think that's this entire class.
Exactly.
Again, it's just like what kind of trait are you looking for? You like the size. I kind of like the speed. It's just kind of pick your poison.
And that goes to the offensive line conversation because Will Campbell is considered the top offensive lineman. But as I said earlier, for me, I would take Armand Membo, the offensive tackle out of Missouri, who is 6'6" and has good reach and stuff. Like I want a bigger body. And quite frankly, I've seen so many clips of different. Look at this rep against Will Campbell. It's like, how do all of these guys have reps beating Will Campbell? Like, I think that Will Campbell is Peter Skoronski. He's a solid player, high upside at guard. He's not a good enough offensive tackle. And it's not just because his arms aren't long enough. It's being able to stay with some of these top tier rushers, deal with the speed to power and things like that. So do you have Campbell over Armand Membo? And would you be shocked to see Membo go as high as number 4 to the Patriots? If they're going to take Will Campbell, I think they should take Membo. You put Membo at left tackle, Morgan Moses at right tackle, and you ride with that. And you can kick over Membo to right tackle and get a new left tackle because Morgan Moses is 35 years old. That's the succession plan. I would do that over Will Campbell projecting as a long-term guard.
I think Membo, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's picked higher because he does have the better traits. It's ceiling versus floor. Membo has a higher ceiling. I think Will Campbell has a higher floor. It's also right now, Membo is a much better run blocker. I think Campbell is the better pass protector right now. Yeah. So
and I'm top 5, dude. I'm going for potential. This was my argument for Cam Ward over Shedeur Sanders. If I'm picking top 5, top 1, I'm going for the guy with the high upside because that lotto ticket, it can't be a $2 winner. Like I can't scratch it off and it be a $2 winner.
I wouldn't be surprised even if a third or fourth candidate gets into this conversation. Calvin Banks or Josh Simmons. I just feel like a team could fall in love with them.
Simmons' knee is good.
I know.
He would have been the top tackle.
So I wouldn't maybe like if we're talking about like shocking bold draft predictions, maybe one of those guys is picked even ahead of both. But Campbell has such a high floor and pass protection is so important. I'm concerned about the arm length, especially at that next level. I'll predict he ends up going though ahead of Membo.
Yeah, I do agree with you that I think he does go over Membo. I just think it's a mistake.
I
Quickly,
get it. I'm a traits guy.
Right, especially that high. If it were
Yeah.
lower in the draft, if I'm late first round, then I'll take the safe guy because
Agreed.
I want to make sure I get something out of it. But I do want to say one more that I think would be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Any chance that we see Jahdae Barron, the versatile Swiss Army knife defensive back out of Texas, go ahead of the strong boundary zone corner Will Johnson out of Michigan?
I say yes. Jahdae Barron, I don't think has the traits of Johnson on the outside, but nickel corners are so important. Look at Cooper DeJean in Philadelphia, Brian Branch in Detroit. These hybrid
and they're getting
backs.
paid this offseason too.
These safety corner hybrids, like a Kyle Hamilton, he's not a corner, but another hybrid in Baltimore.
Yep.
That player is an every down full-time starter. A nickel corner is a full-time starter. And I think they're going to start getting paid like that. And I think a team that might want the versatility of Barron inside out, that might already have their outside their boundary set, could take him ahead of Johnson. So I'd say yes. I don't think Barron's a better boundary corner than Johnson, but his versatility, I do feel like a team could fall in love with. And it's the modern day NFL, you need a player like that on your defense.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why I think guys like Malachi Starks, Nick Almanwari, safeties who have versatility to maybe play over the slot on early downs and then go back to safety or play a little bit of that Kyle Hamilton role, that we talked about. It's become more and more important with teams playing nickel on every down. You have to have a physical box presence from that inside defensive back, and guys who can do that and provide versatility on passing downs back deep or as a cover guy. I think that's critically important. And you're right. You're going to see more guys like that get valued higher than maybe they would have been considered in the past as tweeners and they didn't know how to use them.
Exactly.
Well, with more nickel on early downs, that's how you do that. So very, very interesting. I will say this, though. I don't think that Jahdae Barron goes over Will Campbell. I think Campbell, I just see him at 9 to the Saints with Brandon Staley at defensive coordinator, or San Francisco as well. Like
the big one for me.
I just have a hard time seeing him get out of there. But it will be interesting to watch. Like, these are like really good conversations. And again, flavor of the week. What do you want? You want the boundary zone corner that can sit and watch, or do you want the inside versatile chess piece? Like, what are you looking for?
It's the most unpredictable draft, I think, heading in years. It's just such a high variance draft for me. So I can't wait for Thursday.
Yeah, the mock drafts are going to be nuts this year. But that's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. For me, your host, the Madman Tyler Rowland, my co-host, the Legacy Louis DiBiase. As I tell you every episode, thanks for tuning in and stay safe out there.